Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
It is now 10 minutes before the hour. Time for the Tropical Update, which is sponsored by Rayovac. Okay, let's get the very latest. We have the most recent forecast from Dr. William Gray of Colorado State University. He's made his updated projection for the 1997 hurricane season, and he's lowered it a little bit in terms of major hurricanes. Initially, we were talking about 3. He says there's a better chance that we'll find 2 major hurricanes, and that means at least a Category 3, 4, or 5. 6 hurricanes in all across the Atlantic Basin, and about 11 tropical storms. So quite an interesting forecast, and of course we will keep you posted as we go through the rest of the season. These are areas that we focus our attention in terms of tropical development throughout the month of August. It covers a pretty large area, the Atlantic Basin here. Even the Western Caribbean is a favored area for development, the Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche. Let's see what's going on right now as we look at the broad waters here. The Caribbean Sea is pretty quiet. Look how dry or clear the skies are over the Caribbean Sea here. Very nice conditions waking up this morning in Jamaica and Hispaniola. The Gulf of Mexico is quiet too, pretty much void of any tropical development, and that is probably largely because of a big ridge of high pressure in western Texas, and that's creating strong subsidence and inhibiting any development of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, we have been watching this large area of cloudiness and thunderstorm activity developing over the Caribbean, and you know what? Overall, upper air winds are becoming more favorable for tropical development throughout the Caribbean and the tropical Atlantic. So within the next several days, we're talking about an environment that is pretty conducive for tropical development as we are beginning to see an anticyclonic flow aloft build over this region. So quite interesting as we go through the next several days. But we have been noticing some thunderstorm activity here just east of Puerto Rico over the Lesser Antilles, and you can see the cloudiness associated with it. To the north of it, we've been watching a little upper level low, and perhaps this system has a chance of developing into something because of the upper air winds, again, that are becoming more favorable for tropical development over this entire region. Let's get a different perspective of the tropical waves and thunderstorm activity that is developing here. Of course, this being the northern parts of South America, you can see just the edge here, Puerto Rico, but these are the Lesser Antilles, the islands that make up the Lesser Antilles. And again, you can see some convection here and there, one little wave kind of blowing up. But we will definitely watch this area right now. It's nothing organized. It's just a large area of disorganization with thunderstorms popping up here and there. But as we go through the next couple of days, perhaps things will become a little bit more organized. And pressures are still pretty high in this general area as well, so don't want to scare you too much. The West African coast, the Cape Verde Islands, and we've had several waves coming off the coast. And keep in mind now, this entire region is favored for tropical development throughout the month of August. So that's why we will keep you posted on anything coming off the African coast. Notice this latest little wave or cluster of thunderstorms. We'll watch that for you as we go through the day today. Overall, it's quiet for now in the Atlantic Basin. It's been much more busy, of course, in the Pacific. Tropical storm Guillermo, it's been downgraded to a tropical storm as of the 5 o'clock advisory Eastern time this morning. So it's just been downgraded. Winds now below hurricane status, 70 miles an hour. It's moving to the west, northwest at 14. And you can pretty much see a lot of dry air being pulled the northern side here of this tropical storm. And it is expected to continue on its weakening trend as it moves into cooler waters. So it should totally dissipate actually before even approaching the Hawaiian Islands. Heavy surf advisories remain in effect though for the southern coast of California, even though the system is weakening and moving away. So surfers, be on the lookout for those higher swells. Tina has also been down.
Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us for this tropical update. It is about 9.5 minutes before the hour. Let's get an update on Dr. William Gray's forecast, which he revised just a few days ago to indicate that he still thinks there will be 11 named storms this season. A total of 11, 6 of which could become hurricanes, and he's still projecting that there may be 2 major hurricanes by the tail end of the 1997 hurricane season. Now, as we look at the climatologically favored areas, of course, they're the red shaded zones from the Gulf of Mexico to the Western Caribbean and from about the Bahamas out toward the Cape Verde Islands. These are regions where in the last 100 years or so we have seen development of named storms since about the late 1800s. Today, however, things are very quiet on the Atlantic side, including the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, and most of the tropical Atlantic, with a few exceptions and a couple areas we are watching very closely. Now, there's nothing that is showing any signs of immediate development, but in some cases, conditions are becoming more favorable, so the potential is there for some organization over the next couple of days. Probably not in the Gulf, more than likely not here anytime in the near future. Now, if you look closely, you still see a spin. This is the upper low that's been very persistent in this region so far during the tropical season. And with this upper low here, very little, if any, significant development is likely to organize. There's still some shearing winds on the south side of it. Now, you may see thunderstorms flare up because the stronger winds aloft are conducive to afternoon storms, and they may drop some heavy rains over parts of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and Haiti and the Dominican Republic this afternoon and this evening. But out here, very little cloud cover, let alone thunderstorm activity. Now, as we head, here are the Windward and Leeward Islands. As we head east of the islands, this is the region we'll be watching closely. As you can see, nothing of significance has organized so far, but we have been watching this little cluster of convection because occasionally it flares up. And if it were to maintain itself, sit out over the open ocean waters here, which are certainly warm enough for tropical development, and if the upper level high, the upper level anticyclone were to persist, there's the potential for some future development down the road several days. Right now, nothing imminent. But again, we see that outflow, the anticyclonic twist in the upper levels. Sea surface temperatures are plenty warm, and if the thunderstorms get together and persist, then we may have to watch the area much more closely. Conditions also favorable in the eastern tropical Atlantic as the winds aloft are light and sea surface temperatures have warmed quite a bit from earlier in the season. On the Pacific side, well, we remember Guillermo several days ago, a powerful Category 5 hurricane. No longer. Guillermo is now a tropical storm. 70, 65 mile per hour sustained winds at 18.7 north and 136.7 west. About the location of the storm is roughly midway between Baja California and the Big Island of Hawaii. So essentially it's over the open waters, and other than some shipping that happens to be involved with the circulation, it's no threat to land at all. What's happening with Guillermo? Convection is dying out, although mid and low level circulation is still very well organized, and the circulation will continue to drift west-northwest at about 12 to 14 miles per hour for the next several days. What we have, obviously the winds, the rain well out to sea, but what we have noticed on land are some effects from Guillermo, and that is the heavy surf in Southern California. So there's a heavy surf advisory from Point Conception to San Diego. Those of you swimming in Southern California, you may not be used to the high waves, so be extra cautious if you have beach-going plans. And Tina, now down to a tropical storm.
Watch the Tropical Update 50 minutes after the hour on the Weather Channel.
Tropical Update, we're going to start out in the Pacific. Tropical storm Guillermo, 1,130 miles east of Hilo. Top sustained wind 65. That was the latest advisory as of 2 p.m. Pacific. Get an idea where Guillermo is here. Here are the Hawaiian Islands and over to California, actually receiving some of the surf. We're actually starting in the Pacific. That's because the Atlantic, pretty quiet, but I'll show you some pictures of what's going on in a second. Here's a closer view showing what we have happening here. Where are the Hawaiian Islands? somewhere about out here, long ways away still. Essentially what we're seeing is Guillermo with the center of circulation through here. This is no longer, now you have eyes with hurricanes. This is a tropical storm, and with the tropical storm it's heading over cooler water. And all these tropical systems, they derive their energy from the warm ocean, sea surface, and what we're seeing here is the cooler water, less energy to supply these tropical systems. So it is weakening. It is not going to make its way toward Hawaii. Maybe some of the clouds, maybe, but what is impacting Hawaii is some of the easterly swell that far away and some of the eastward facing beaches, seeing some very high swell in Hawaii. But otherwise, if you're planning a trip, you see this thing here, and you're thinking, I don't know, yeah, no big problems whatsoever. In fact, if anything, it looks like there may even be a little bit of some of the upper level winds trying to tear some of the clouds off to the north. Over toward the Southern California beaches, heavy surf advisories, those are now dropped. But essentially what we're still looking at is some of the rough swell, maybe not as heavy as recently, but some of those sets of breakers coming in still pretty big. So the southward facing beaches, watch out from Point Conception all the way down toward San Diego. Of course, I'd suspect also over toward Baja on the western coast, western shore, you're going to pick up some big waves too.
The 2 p.m. information. Kim is going to call up on the other source the latest information, I believe. Kim, were you able to get that? Never mind. Okay, but we do have some new information for you. I can tell you that the winds have been dropped down to 55 miles an hour with Guillermo, so the weakening trend continues with the tropical storm. All right, we have it now. Let's go ahead. There we go. This is as of 8 p.m. There it is, 55 miles an hour. Now a little over 1,000 miles east of Hilo, Hawaii, but continuing to move to the northwest, and that should take it away from the Hawaiian Islands, or generally parallel to them. Moving northwest at 13. If you're plotting this at home, 20.4 north, 138.4 west. So again, as Guillermo continues to move over the colder waters, it will continue to weaken. All right, here we go with the satellite perspective. You can still see a well-defined circulation here. What you're not seeing is a lot of deep thunderstorms or deep convection. We are getting a little bit of that on the eastern semicircle, but it's not a very symmetrical storm anymore, and this weakening trend will probably continue as Tropical Storm Guillermo continues to move to the north and to the west, generally, and may eventually get caught by this trough as it moves more toward the northwest. But we think it's going to become extratropical, which is really a misnomer. When you think of extratropical, you think, oh, it's going to get more tropical characteristics. No, it's going to lose its tropical characteristics and just become a low-level swirl out here in the central parts of the Pacific between Hawaii and the U.S. Still, it has been causing some high surf along the Southern California coast, but those high surf advisories have been discontinued, and there's been some higher surf reported, particularly along the east-facing beaches there, the Kona coast, I believe that's called there, in Hawaii. All right.